This is The Art Show by T-Podcast with your host Milo H.G. Waters. Made with Zencaster, distributed by Anchor. For more information about this week's artist, check the description below. But now, sit back, pop the kettle on, and enjoy the conversation. Welcome, one and all. It is my pleasure to introduce Harrie. Fantastic painter, theatre maker, artist extraordinaire. It is wonderful to have you. Please tell me, Harrie, what is in your teapot?
Hello! I have got a little homemade iced tea today with red berries and chamomile. Ooh.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. Did you make it yourself then if it's homemade?
Yes, I did. It's a little hack that I do with upcycling plastic bottles. So if you've got a bottle of lemonade that you've brought from the shop, you can reuse that bottle to make your tea, pop it in your freezer, and then take it out a few hours later, and you've got your little homemade iced tea.
Oh, fantastic. Right, so it's exciting times for you at the moment, right? Because you've just had an exhibition, right?
Yeah, so it's still on. I'm doing an exhibition called Antidote at Mams Gallery in Swindon. We're on for the whole month until the end of June. Last night we had a really big event, like an open evening with the artists, with live music and stuff. It was absolutely fabulous. I definitely needed my caffeine this morning, though. I'm very tired.
I'm sure. Right, so we've got a few of your pictures that are featured in the exhibition that we're going to show on the podcast. So, if I put it up, would you like to talk about this one first? I believe, did you say this was called The Big Bad?
Yeah, okay. The Big Bad. This is it's huge. It's so beautiful. The canvas is 100 by 120 centimeters, and it really swallows you when you walk into a room and you see it. Like you really start to get lost in the image. It's very immersive. So the collection that it's from is called the Expressionist Tales. So this is where painting became my little surrogate for theatre whilst it's been closed in lockdown. So I've taken stories and I've transformed them into visual art as a new means of storytelling, as that's a big part of who I am as a theatre maker.
Yeah, man. So tell us a little bit about how you take stories and transfer them into the painting. In fact, why don't you start off by telling us what the story is that you're telling here and how you kind of went about putting that story onto a canvas.
Okay, so The Big Bad is based on a reoccurring nightmare that I used to have as a child. I've heard it's quite a common one, so a few people might relate to this, where essentially I was Little Red Riding Hood and I'd be running through the forest from the big bad wolf, and the forest would start to morph and change into an everlasting labyrinth that it just felt that I could never get away from this wolf, and it just became lost in this ever-changing, almost mechanical construct of nature. It was terrifying for a child. It's very terrifying for someone my age now anyway. But yeah, over the years, I think you start to realize that we all have different things in our life that are the big bad, that the things that are chasing us, and that we lose ourselves in a labyrinth in regards to mental health, emotional well-being, anxieties, and a whole complex web of what it is to be human in today's world. And that really transcends into a whole multitude of I'm struggling to articulate this thought a whole multitude of chaos in everyday life. Yeah, so the process was a bit weird. I never know what I'm going to paint when I start, so that's the biggest thing about my process. So I start with a large canvas, and I laid it flat on the ground, threw some black paint on it, just in a really random, chaotic pattern. By then picking up the canvas and tilting it into different directions, you create these running drip lines that you're able to control, almost like that little game that you had as a kid when you had the little ball bearing inside a maze, and you'd like tilt that little maze around and you start to create a labyrinth. So that's the first stage. And then I leave it to dry. And after it's dried, I stare at it for about a day. I sit there with my cup of tea, and I just stare at this bizarre pattern for a little while, and then I start to get it's a really subconscious feeling when you know what colours that you want to use in a painting like this. And you just start to colour in some of the shapes and pick out tones, and it's almost like building architecture within the chaos that's already on the canvas. And slowly you start to think, okay, I can see this sort of landscape emerging, and you start to connect it to something very personal inside yourself on not always a conscious level immediately. But the moment I twigged that, oh my goodness, this is that dream, you then are able to start infusing more elements of that dream purposefully into the piece. So you start to find where the eyes of the lurking wolf would hide, and the snarling jaws, the natural places within the architecture that you've created where the teeth would start to protrude and hang down. It's very, very chaotic, and it sounds absolutely bonkers. Somehow it works.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. And when you said that in your dream the forest was changing and shifting, it really kind of like clicked there for me, because it was like when you said it was based on a story, I was sort of trying to find like a kind of comic strip sort of flow to it, but now I realize like it is that, because that journey is so so chaotic and so all over the place, and it's that experience of running through a forest and just having things passing by like left and right kind of thing, and being hounded by this wolf. I really do see it. You see like bits of the teeth emerging, and like some of the trees cropping out, and this red flow of I'm guessing that's the red hood, like just weaving in and out of it. It's really beautiful, and gosh, I'd love to see it in person. Like I bet it's really stunning on that size as well.
Grandma's house is hidden inside of there somewhere as well. But I won't tell you where. And see if it's like a Where's Wally book. See if you can find Grandma's house. Yeah, but there's just so many, and even Red Riding Hood, like fragments of her face are hidden within the piece as well. So you'll see areas where you start to see a mouth and lips and a different kind of eye emerging, or the shape of a nose and things like this. So it's all hidden within the single image. And for me, this style completely has come from my theatrical background, because as a theatre maker, what I love is experiential and alternative storytelling. So when you have an audience go into the space and you present them with something that isn't A, B, C, D, you present them with a world that they then enter and discover a story themselves. That concept is translated into this new style of painting that I've been working with. So it's become my surrogate for theatres since they've been closed in COVID.
Well, yeah, it's fantastic, and yeah, just even as you're talking, then I could like I'm looking at it now, and I keep finding more stuff in there. It's got that quality of like you can look at it for hours and just keep finding more stuff. And I think that's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, because you like, were you painting before you started making theatre, or like did the two come together? I'm just sort of interested in how they kind of interact in your practice, like aside from being a bit of a surrogate.
So for me, painting started as soon as I could probably pick up a paintbrush, or not even a brush. I even to this day I still paint with my hands and my fingers, or and like my elbow comes out sometimes. Um, I really have been creating chaos from a very young age. I like to say I'm a creature of chaos. I'm very much proud of that in my identity of who I am. Is I'm
Yeah,
this bundle of chaos that somehow finds structure. Um, and theatre as well for me came also from a very early age. It's all about storytelling. Art and theatre and music and dance for me it is all storytelling, which is at the heart of who we are as humans. And to be able to share your stories has a transcendent effect on the people around you, whether it's how your story affects someone or how your story relates to something someone else is experiencing, but they haven't been able to articulate or show that yet. Um, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
absolutely. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. It is, it is so fundamental to who we are as humans, as people, and how we make sense of life and how we connect to others. And yeah, that's brilliant. So let's jump back to the exhibition itself, because you guys put on a bit of an event the other night, didn't you?
Yeah, so last night we had a live music and painting showcase. We're still developing what this quite is exactly. It's in the very early formative stages, but a very good friend of mine, Gary Bamford, he's a musician from the same town as me in Swindon, and he's worked with the theatre company that I'm an associate artist for in the past in composing music for our experiential shows. And I went to Gary and I picked up one of his albums and I sat in my art studio and I listened to his new album, The Year That Wasn't, um, and lost myself in the music and took my theatrical training and allowed my body to channel the sounds, if that makes any sense at all. Anyone who
Yeah.
might have been in a movement class before may resonate with this. The concept of transforming sound into movement, but then allowing that movement to go from movement to painting. It was a very very rewarding process, and what came out of it was stunning. Yeah, that's I believe you've got a picture of this one, the painting The Year That Wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely we do. Yeah, and it's gorgeous. Like I so yeah, I mean I want you to tell me a bit about it, but sort of when I look at it, I can see a lot there. Like at first I kind of get a bit of a landscape vibe from it, because you've got this beautiful kind of like starry night sky towards the top in the left and right, and I can vaguely see a moon there. And I think we'll talk about your night skies a bit later, because I know that's something you've been really into and had a lot of practice at. Um, and yeah, and this these wonderful textured blues at the bottom, and in the middle you've got this big red tree, or perhaps even like a kind of hourglass. I can see a bit of a kind of human form in there a little bit. But yeah, it's got that brilliant mix that we saw in the last painting of kind of that balance between chaos and order, and you can keep looking at it and keep finding more in it. And I'm just starting to see kind of like reflections from the top half in the bottom light. But yeah, enough of me rabbiting. Tell me about it. Like, yeah.
So to me, the beautiful thing about this piece is that it's abstract expressionism, which means it's not about what I've presented to you on the canvas. It's about what you find in it yourself. So as much as I could sit here and I could tell you, oh, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that to me isn't what is beautiful about this piece. What's beautiful about this piece is hearing what others see within the images. And it becomes almost a reflection of themselves. And people start to discover a little bit about their subconscious sometimes in the way that they see shapes and colours and tones, and how everybody experiences colour and texture is so personal on your life experience. To some people the colour red, it's a colour of passion. To some people the colour red is sportsmanship. It really depends on your background and where you're from, on how you read the piece. So for me, it's not about creating something specific. It's about creating something to provoke. Is the best way I can articulate that. And again, it's a piece that's not planned. So it entirely came from Gary's music, which inspired a project between the two of us. So following painting this piece just away on my own in my studio in isolation and lockdown, trying not to absolutely lose the plot, I had like a light bulb moment, and I contacted Gary and I was like, Gary, look at what happened when I painted your music. I think there's an idea here. Let's meet up, let's make some music and make some art and try doing it at the same time. So the concept of our project is symbiosis. Okay, that's what we've nicknamed it. We've nicknamed it Project Symbiosis. In which Gary creates music at the same time as I'm creating art, and we allow the art to conduct the music and the music to conduct the art. And there's this interchange between who is kind of in control of what element at what time, because a sporadic change in the music can absolutely change the direction of the painting, but equally a specific color choice from myself can sporadically change the tone of the music, and vice versa. And at the moment it's a very explorative project. So we've only had a few sessions working together, and as I said at the exhibition last night, that was our first sort of public showing of this work. Previously we'd done a workshop together just for 4 hours to see what would happen, and it was very funny actually, because last night Gary had planned a set list from his amazing repertoire of music, that he intended to play, and I was going to paint based on his work. And Gary turned to me in the evening and he said, Harrie, I don't want to play the set list. And I was like, okay. He was like, I had so much fun with what we was doing yesterday. Let's just improvise. Let's do the same thing. And I was like, oh, are you sure? And he said, yes, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Let's create something new together. So instead of this pre-planned thing that we were going to do in the evening event, we ended up creating something entirely new together. And oh my goodness, I could not believe how many people could sit and watch for so long to sort of lose themselves in that moment. Because you think as a painter, when you're off in your studio in your own little world, you don't imagine that that's something that people want to see. You don't imagine that as a form of entertainment. But then you add this incredible musician to it, and the performance element, it just becomes so elevated and the collaboration between the two of us is just so exciting. It's so early stages, but we're really hoping to go further with it. Yeah, it's an absolute joy. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. Where's me tea?
No, not at all. That's really, really interesting, man. And yeah, it sounds like you've got a really great partnership there. And it's interesting, like when you were talking about what it was like kind of improvising that, it kind of threw me back to movement lessons at drama school, because you'll remember this when you're moving with someone, and like sometimes you're leading, sometimes they're leading, and you get into that kind of flow where it's kind of like neither of you are leading, but you both are at the same time. You're just bouncing off each other, and it's so rewarding and just so satisfying in that moment. And I think it's great that you've got that performance background, that you can bring your artwork into a live environment and paint live with it. It sounds fantastic, and I can totally understand why people would be enthralled just just sitting down and watching that. So yeah, that's really bloody fascinating, mate. Fantastic. So if I can avoid bumping my microphone. There we go. So
And it's an
yeah, we've
absolute
got
joy.
yeah.
It's an absolute joy to create.
Yeah, it is so euphoric, isn't it, when you get into those partnerships where it's just flowing, it's just happening, and the art is just coming out and it's not planned. And really great stuff. So we've also got a couple of portraits here that you've done. So yeah, I'm not going to say anything. Would you like to tell us about these a little bit?
Oh, I'm going to blow your mind now when I say to you that the face that you see in this image is not the portrait. So the portrait is what's behind the lined drawing of the face. Okay. So the concept behind this really is about what's beyond what we see. In the sense that we as human beings are this elaborate, complex web of synapses and electricity and feelings and emotions and history and stories, and everything that makes us who we are is so far beyond what is seen in our shape. And everything that we are transcends the shape of what people see. And that's part of what I really wanted to capture in this collection. The collection's called Disordered, as in disordered thoughts, disordered life. Everything's out of order, everything's chaotic, everything is disordered, but also the parallel that it draws there naturally with emotional health and mental well-being, which is a really important thing, and it's very personal to me as well as it is to a lot of people. I think anyone who's experienced some form of mental emotional health or I've forgotten what the word is. Or a different experience of life, how we perceive things differently because of things that have happened to us in our past, and how we see the world is a reflection of everything that is so much more than the shape of what we are, which is both beautiful and tragic at the same time. The collection it taps into a lot of my own experiences with depression and anxiety, and more specifically is I have this bizarre condition that's not really a condition, but it is a condition. It's just a bit confusing because it's quite new in the medical community. So I have a condition called non-epileptic attack disorder, which presents itself to the people around me as if I'm having epileptic seizures. But the the main difference is that it's not an electrical process in my brain that's causing it. It's something that's more sensory, and or based on something very emotional and deep set that you can't put your fingers on necessarily. You can't pinpoint what the root cause of these things are, because they're very deep within your mental well-being, and your history. And there's so many people with this condition, and it's a really difficult day-to-day life, and a drastic change to how you live, as it is with many people with different conditions and things. For example, you go for a walk down the street not knowing if you're going to fall unconscious, and then you have that concern of, and that anxiety of, is it safe for me to walk down the street today? Is it safe for me to leave the house? And you've got no way of knowing that. So every day when you have the courage to push yourself into continuing life as it was before you had your condition, the whole complicated web of anxiety and and just the emotional weight of it, is incredibly difficult. And that sensation is something that I've tried to capture in these images as well. So that sensation and that experience and those feelings through abstract expressionism, I've tried to capture into the canvas beyond the faces in the series. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think you've done it beautifully, as well. To be honest, I mean, I'm looking at it now, and what I love about the synapses is there's so much, I guess, depth to them. Like, it doesn't look like one sort of layer of white synapse of webbing or whatever, sort of like you just laid on the page. Like, you look at it and it feels like you can just go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. Like, there are ones sort of like very close to you and ones further away, and this sort of blackness behind just poking through here and there. And yeah, I think it really does kind of convey that like deep chaos, sort of all around. That's yeah, that I'm sure a lot of people will be able to relate to. And again, it's got that quality of your other works that you can just look at it and keep looking at it, but in a slightly different way. It feels like it's really not like the first one, where I was sort of finding like other little bits, little moments, that were drawing me in. It's like I'm looking at it and it feels like the whole thing is kind of pulling me in into this depth of this chaotic web. Like I'm falling into a spider's cave or something, and there's just all this crazy chaos webbing around me. Like, but yeah, it's really gorgeous, man. So we've got
There's
another
so much
painting.
paint on those ones.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell. Out of interest, yeah, if we just sort of divert for a bit, what kind of paints do you like to use? Do you have a preferred sort of like? I'm guessing these are all acrylics. He says with very little knowledge of painting.
I'm not really one. So I didn't have like higher education formal training in art. Okay, so I don't have a huge knowledge base. I just throw things and try things out and experiment. So I know there's probably quite a few artists out there that when I tell them what I use, they're going to go, ah, why? I'm sure I probably break a lot of the rules of how materials work, because I don't really know what's going on. I just make things. So like with these this disordered collection, um Yeah, with the disordered collection, you've got everything in there from oils, house emulsion, outdoor masonry paint, acrylics, all sorts of concoctions. I'm like a little alchemist in my studio. I get all my jars from like when you've got like a jar of pickles or you've got a jar of um, tomato sauce, that sort of thing. I keep all my jars and I, like an alchemist, to mix all of these paints up in my studio. And I get a big stick and I mix them all around and until I get like the right consistency or the colours or something that intrigues me. And I end up with all these jars lined up in my back garden. And I pop the canvas outside. So with the disordered project, I use like a dripping technique. And so I'll take something like the back of a paintbrush, and I'll dip it into the paint. And then as you bring it out fast, it creates like these long streams of paint. And when you get the right consistency, it just goes like string. Like you said earlier about a spider's web, it just beads out like silk. If your consistencies are a little heavier, you get like blobbing. So instead of a flow, you get like spats come out, which has its own effect and is very interesting to move that texture into the piece. Whereas something like the Big Bad, that painting started with a acrylic base. The tipping technique that I mentioned earlier, that was with a emulsion house paint. You know, if you've got tins of paint down the shed, don't leave them in the shed. You can make something beautiful with it, okay? It doesn't matter that it's your nan's old bedroom wall colour. It doesn't matter. You can do something beautiful with it. And charcoals. And charcoals. I'm a
Hey.
big fan of charcoals. So after that dried, I worked into it with charcoals, and then the colour was the last thing for me to add. There's one other thing that I use that I love. You might have heard of it. Have you heard of Stuart Sample's Black 3.0?
No, not at all. Tell me.
No? Okay. So there's a big drama
No.
in the art industry. Yeah. There's a really big
Oh,
drama
love a bit of art
where
controversy.
one artist obtained the rights to a particular paint called Vanta Black. And Vanta Black was a black paint that absorbs such a high quality of light that when you look at it, it almost looks like a black hole. And you try to capture photos, and the photos cannot capture how absorbent this pigment is. It's like absolutely insane and gorgeous. But one artist named Anish Kapoor obtained the sole rights to use this color, which made a lot of other artists very unhappy. There's a lot of people out there that don't
Can you ask
believe
me
there should
why?
be ownership of a color. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So there's another artist called Stuart Sample. I think it's Stuart Sample. You're going to have to double check on that one. I'm really bad with name pronunciations. um, but yeah, Stuart decided that no one should have just ownership of a color. So he created the world's pinkest pink. And he put it on sale in the arts community. Anyone could use this amazing world's pinkest pink, except for Anish Kapoor. So you actually have to sign a thing to say, I am not Anish Kapoor, I am not affiliated with Anish Kapoor, and I will not be giving this product to Anish Kapoor. So it was kind of like his retaliation. And that led him into exploring rich pigment paints, which most recently the black version of is called Black 3.0. And I love this paint so much. It has such an emotive effect because the amount of light that it absorbs, it is insane. And it's only when you see it in person that you'll really understand. But it really hits something very guttural and deep inside of you to see this void and this absence of light and color that you hadn't observed before. You know, not even when you look at the night sky, there seems to be more light in that shade of black than there is in this paint, and the pigment is just stunning. So whenever I'm working on a very emotional, guttural piece, I like to throw a bit of that in there. Very selectively though. I'm very selective with how I use it. But there's a lot of incredible artists out there using this paint, and it's just stunning. You should Google it. It's great. It's amazing.
No, that is fantastic, and that's really interesting. And yeah, personally, I don't see how anyone can copyright a color. That seems a little bit ludicrous to me. But yeah, and as for your process, that and the paint you use, like that, I totally get that from knowing you. Like, I wouldn't expect anything less from, you know, the themes of chaos throughout your work than that kind of chaotic, just grabbing paints. I can definitely see you as kind of bad alchemist in your lab studio, mixing it all up. Okay, so the last photo from the last painting from the exhibition that we've got to talk about is this wonderful nude. So again, I'm not going to say anything. Like, just take us away. Let us into this thing.
Okay, so this piece started my exploration into painting and drawing nudes. It's part of a collection called the Raw Armory, which is all about the raw female power of the blah 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 blah. Sorry, I got tongue-tied.
Oh, it's no worries, mate. The amount of times I've misspoke on this.
Should we start that again?
Deep breath. Yeah, no problem. Take two. Sam. Go on, have a sip of your tea. And and give it another bash.
Do you want to go from your question? Is that okay?
Go on. So I phrased that question dreadfully as well. So I'll have another go at the question. You have another go at the answer. So yeah, we've got this beautiful nude from the Raw Armory collection, and yeah, I'd just like you to tell us about it. Tell us where it came from, how you produced it. And yeah, I don't want to say anything and give any preconception, so just take us away on this.
Okay, so following the chat about materials and stuff we've just had, this piece is on canvas, and it's initially drawn in charcoal and then painted in acrylics, and then I've used charcoal again in layers over the top to add tones and all sorts of magical things. But the really eye-catching part of this painting you'll see is in the material aspect is gold leaf. So this nude is gilded with golden stretch marks across her body, and they are absolutely stunning. There's this really old tradition in Japan where they take broken pottery and they repair it with gold. And I took this idea and I encompassed that with my personal struggles with my body and my image. Like many humans, men, women, non-gender conforming people, and many of us out there, we have a very complicated relationship with the form of our bodies. And it's very often that growth in our body can present itself as something we perceive to be ugly, like stretch marks. As a teenager, I hit puberty, and I erupted in stretch marks. I went from teeny tiny Harrie to I was suddenly like 5'9", overpowering everyone in my family. I like exploded. And the aftermath of that was these horrible, what I perceived to be at the time, horrible stretch marks, like scars that had stretched through my skin as my body had like ruptured into its new shape. And for years I hated these marks so much. They would control the clothing I would wear to make sure that they couldn't be seen. I felt like I had to hide them. They felt ugly. It felt like they weren't mine. It didn't feel like that was part of me. And that's a terrifying thing. And when you're going through puberty and your body is changing so much, to have these scars emerge all over your body, and it happens to everyone. I understand that this happens to everyone across gender. But I don't know the intimate side of a man's relationship with that. But what I do know is a woman's relationship with it as a woman myself. So that's what I've tried to tell is my personal story there with my battle with my body and my mental attitude towards my image, and this idea of the gold inlaid pottery is for me capturing the idea of something that we think is broken and damaged or wrong in some way. Actually, it just takes the right turn of thought for that to turn to gold, and to go from something that we fear to something that is so beautiful and that we're so proud of. That's what we've survived, you know. That's what we've become. I've got dear friends that resonate with this in regards to personal experiences of self-harm and the scars that they continue to have into their adult day, that actually they're marks of survival. They're marks of how far that someone has fought and how far they've got through their battle. And these things in our body that we feel a need to hide, it's like we're hiding part of who we are from the world. And that resonates with me on so many levels. It goes into the world of queer identity and coming out, and this idea of not being able to present who you are, and not being able to, this idea of having to hide so much about yourself. Yeah. Oh, on that note, happy Pride Month, everyone. Happy Pride Month.
Yeah, actually, happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride Month to all my fellow rainbows. I love you. And to all the fellow rainbows that have not yet been able to share their rainbow, I love you too. And time will come. It's a very big thing. Yeah, it's a very big thing deciding when to show your rainbow, you know, and it translates. The concept all binds together. It all, yeah. Sorry, I went off on another tangent. I start talking about
not
these things, and it's so hard to stop.
Yeah. No, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt
stop.
you because I can,
But yeah,
I can tell
with this
how strongly you're connected to it.
But yeah, with this painting in particular, it's a celebration of the things that we feel must be hidden, and actually the things that are beautiful about us. It's like my mother is a great inspiration of mine, Janet, and she has a cesarean scar that for years she hated, and actually when she could start to talk to me about it, she discovered a love for it, because she realized that me and my brother, we are growing into adults, and we're not the little babies anymore, you know, but we always will be her babies. And she always has this very permanent reminder of her babies on her body. The cesarean mark has become a tribute to her children in such a beautiful way, and that's how she now sees that on her body, which I think is such a beautiful thing, which has also inspired a few more pieces in this collection as well. But yeah, it's just positivity, not just positivity, but pride, you know, pride of all those things that we feel should be hidden, that celebrate the beauty of it. Because nothing should be hidden. We shouldn't hide. You shouldn't have to hide anything. Be who the freaking heck you are and celebrate that person, you know, and celebrate it. And those things that you find hard to love about yourself, you need to love those things even more. Those things in you need that love, and they need that protection, you know. It's like, yeah, there's Lead with Love. Lead with Love is one of my favourite directors that I've worked with, Andrew McPherson, that I worked with at East 15. He was my director for the show The Fog, which we actually used some of my space paintings in the set for. He always used to say to the company, "Lead with love," and it's really stuck with me as a really great mantra. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a great mantra, and yeah, just such a brilliant message for that whole collection, and yeah, something I think we can all relate to. I mean, you know, we all have things about ourselves that we, you know, sometimes we want to hide or we're not sure how we feel about them, and yeah, I think it is really good to like you say, take pride in them. The one I always the quote I always think about, I can't remember where it's from, but it's something like uh when we get to heaven we'll be judged by our scars, not our medals. And I think that is so important, because to me that kind of means like it's, you know, it's not about what you put on top of yourself kind of thing and how you decorate yourself. It is about who you are and wear your scars with pride, because like you say, they've made you into the person that you are today, and that's beautiful. And you know, we are all unique people, and I think you show that off just fantastically in this collection. So yeah, that's great, and thank you so much for talking
There's a
about it as
lot of
well.
buns in this collection too.
Well, we all love a good bomb, so
There's a lot of buns. Yeah.
okay. Well, we're coming up to time. You did just mention your space paintings, and I have one of them here, and I really want to talk about these because they are just gorgeous. So please, just tell us how you go about creating these space paintings, and you know, sort of where they came from. And yeah, if we've got chance, I'd love to hear a bit about incorporating them into shows and things. But yeah, I'll let you take it away.
I mean, who doesn't love space? Who doesn't love space? One of the
Good
best
answer.
things is you know, to be able to sit down in your garden, lie down on the grass, or whatever, and just look at the beauty that is the freaking sky. Like, it is stunning. It is chaos. It is creation. It is immersive as heck and so transcendent. And for a lot of people, it's also very spiritual. You know, I always had this thing from a kid that when I lose someone, they become a star in the sky. Um, and it's become a little bit of one of my reflections on people when I lose them, and I always look to the sky. And it sounds a bit cheesy, I understand that, but it's just such a beautiful thing to project a memory of someone into something so epic, and that's always there, you know. There's just this very beautiful thing about that. So I've always had a very deep connection with stars and space and spirituality. I wanted to be an astronaut at one point as a kid, but I was really bad at maths.
Who
Um,
didn't?
uh, yeah, yeah. But I was really bad at maths, so I didn't think I'd be a very good astronaut. But I thought I'd be really good at the jumping part. I think that's the main thing I wanted to do. I just kind of wanted to go moonwalking,
Yeah.
and draw the stars, you know. But yeah, so
Yeah.
these ones start with just a canvas, and I coat them in black acrylic. Um, and then I use a technique called brush tapping, which is where you get a paintbrush. This isn't a paintbrush, but it will do. You get a paintbrush and you get a stick and you tap your brush. And it makes this really nice, like ASMR tapping sound. It's really rewarding.
Oh, okay.
So you'll tap your brush with a loose acrylic on the end, and you get this beautiful, chaotic spatter of tiny little dots. And that's the starting point. So my big black canvases end up covered in just tiny little specks of white. I then just choose a colour randomly. I'll go, oh, today feels like a blue day, I want blue. So I'd go and choose me blues. And I'd sit there with my canvas or up on my easel, and I'd use my hands and sponges and cloths, and I'd start to create these nebula-like clouds of colour. And one colour leads into another, and all of a sudden, this galactic vision of chaos just starts to grow. Again, I've got no idea what it's going to look like when I start. It's just about kind of trusting your gut and going with it. So after creating these like gaseous, gassy clouds, oh, these gas-like clouds, I'm working with lots of blending and layers, and then every single one of those white dots gets worked into by hand. So that's the really long process. So I go back to find where all those pinpoints landed, and I use different layers of paint and blending techniques. And you get about 5 layers in each of the stars on the canvas, which is, when you see the size of the canvases, it's crazy. So it becomes very much a piece of meditation. It becomes very much a piece of meditation. And and I just keep layering and layering and layering, and eventually I'll go, yeah, it's done. They can take anything from sort of 20 to 50 hours.
God, and Bennett. Well, yeah, I mean, and it shows. It really does show. Like, they are gorgeous, and again, that quality, if you can just look at them and just keep staring at them, finding more and more things to look at there. Yeah, really fantastic, man. I want one on my wall, to be honest. But yeah, tell us a little bit about
well, look, I do want a commission.
Hey, I'm a bit skint at the moment, so when the podcast gets monetized and I start making Joe Rogan books, like, but yeah, so
Well,
just
I've
before we
got a
finish
few
up,
prints on hand as well.
Hey. But yeah, just before we finish up,
Oh, the lag,
these have
the
been
lag.
used in, in it, the lag. So, tell me a bit about how they ended up in some shows that you've done.
Oh, okay. So the director that I previously mentioned, Andrew, who is just an incredible human being. Oh my goodness. We were working on a project called Dog, and I showed Andrew some of my artwork, and then I had a little chat with Carlos, who was our in-house designer, and I showed him the work, and Carlos also got really excited. And because with my large space paintings, I have some amazing high-res photography of we were actually able to project these incredible photographs artwork into the theatre space, and it projected and it crossed the whole stage, and it kind of fills the space with space.
Yeah.
This is a funny sentence. Um, yeah, um, it's stunning. It was absolutely stunning to see it on that size. You know, to see my artwork in that scale was absolutely bonkers. And to have that support from fellow creatives that were excited about my work as well, that was really humbling for me. And it gave me so much confidence in what I do, to see that other creatives value the work as well. Because a lot of artists, we all kind of just worry that no one's gonna like our pictures. We're like, oh, they're gonna just think we've
Yeah.
been doodling in our rooms and we've made a mess, and you know, it's 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 an amazing thing to have someone recognize your work and be like, wow, that's something. It's really humbling, and it was just incredible to see it used in the set design. And then a show following that, because of the projections and stuff and the relationship I built with the in-house designer, in regards to creative design for theatre, I ended up performing in a show called Our Town, directed by Mams Gallery, and and I spent a lot of the time of the play drawing the map of the town. So we turned the back
Okay.
wall of the theatre into a massive chalkboard, and Our Town is set in a little American town. It's a really old traditional play, and I spent the whole show drawing in front of the audience this gigantic chalk map of the town. It was bonkers. It was a really amazing way to integrate once again my art with my theatre life. And for me, the two lives coexist. I call myself an actor artist. Like you get actor musicians, you know. I've got a lot of very
Yeah.
talented friends that are actor musicians, and yeah, as you know, with East 15, they really foster that creative cross collaboration of work. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, yeah, that's fantastic, and we're coming up to time, so I think that is a brilliant place to end on. But it's been fantastic talking to you, Harrie. Really insightful and great to see your work. And the exhibition's still on, isn't it? Do you want to just remind everyone where they can catch it?
Yeah, so we're still on until the end of the month, so up until the end of July. It's at Mams Gallery on Escott Hill in Swindon, which is a fantastic place. You can just pop online. They've got an amazing website, and a good social media presence as well. The exhibition is called Antidote. So all the work featured is about the healing and cathartic power of artwork. We've got a few more live events happening, so keep an eye on social media for posts on that one. And look out for Project Symbiosis with Harrie and Gary Bamford, because we're hoping to get that ball rolling soon as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, we'll leave it there, dude. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye. Cheers.